Okay. So, because I'm going to put this in our future trainings. And you can rewatch it if you ever need a brush up. So, let me ask you guys, because you guys are both pretty new. What if, when you have someone that says, hey, I want to buy a house, what are the things that you do before you even start to pull together the documents in dotloop? What do you do?
So now let me just for clarity purposes, this is after we've had buyer consult, you've seen the property. This is pre-offer, right? At that point.
You've seen the property and they're like, Jay, this is it. And
Okay.
they say to you, what happens next?
So what I advise them of is that first I'm going to pull some comps. If I haven't already done that on the property, I'm going to pull some comps to get an idea of what a good offer price would be. And then, hold on.
All right, so we're going to pull comps, right?
Yeah, I can't. You went away for a sec, but I'm sure you're coming back.
I went away because I was trying to share screen, whiteboard, share. Can you see this whiteboard?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. All right, so we're going to pull comps, right? What else are we going to do?
I usually check to see if it's fee simple or ground rent, even though it's in the listing. I'll still go and check public record just to make sure that I don't get caught up if it ends up being ground rent.
You're going to pull the public record.
Yep.
What else are you going to do?
I usually get an updated pre-approval letter from the lender reflecting the specific amount that's being offered.
Okay. I would also, when you're talking to the lender, have the lender give a detailed estimated cost sheet to the buyer.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. And then what else do I do? I just was thinking about what else I do.
Because now you have a specific property. So you have a specific price, you have specific taxes, right? You may or may not have condo fees, homeowners association fees, any other additional fees might be involved in this, okay? So we haven't even touched the paperwork yet, and we have a lot. There's one other thing in according to the public record, I want you to pull the deed too.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you can also ask Randy to help you with some of this stuff. And the other thing you have to do is pull the docs from Bright.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to, that was the next thing I was going to say is pull the seller disclosure from Bright.
Mm-hmm. You also, so you're going to get an updated pre-approval letter from the lender with the specific details. You're going to get a detailed cost sheet to the buyer. And this is where you also really want to ask the buyer, how much cash do they have?
So question.
Yeah.
I may have been trained incorrectly, but I was always trained that that's like more of a consultation earlier on type of question.
Absolutely it is, but you want to re-verify, because if they told you they have 10 grand, so you still have that $10,000?
Right. I got you.
You're just re-verifying. So yes, it is a consultation question, but you have to, like, now the rubber meets the road. You still have that 10 grand, right? Like, you haven't spent the money, right? You know, you're gonna, especially with clients that are low margin, meaning they are thin on their cash, you want to make sure that they have not done anything with the cash.
Gotcha.
That they still have it. I mean, Crystal, honestly, part of that is because Crystal's buyer spent his cash.
I remember that. I still drown him to this day about spending that money.
So, you know, we asked, and then he went and spent the money. So that's, you know, that's why you've got to, and you also need to, at that consultation, whatever money they have earmarked for the purchase, you have to drill it into them that they can't do, like when they are in the process of shopping for a home, they cannot do any major purchases, no major shifting of money. It will send up red flags to the lender. You know, everything has to stay the same. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So ask again, how much cash do they have? You know, confirm that everything looks good with the lender. Like, okay, you know, because this way, when you then start diving in, okay, you're going to pull comps, you're going to pull the public record, you're going to pull the deed, you know, and you look at what the asking price is, how long the property has been on the market, and you're sort of establishing an offer strategy. Okay. So now the next step is you're going to have a conversation about establishing an offer strategy. Okay. Now there's two camps on offer strategy, right? The first camp is the house has been on the market for a moderate amount of time. You know that you don't have to go in at full price. You can, you know, you can maybe negotiate a little bit. You can ask for some seller contribution if the buyer needs it, right? You know, there is negotiating ability, right? Because there's not 10 other offers and the house has been on the market for 2 seconds. Make sense?
Makes sense. I would say one other thing, what I do additional, and it's just because almost everybody who I work with needs financial help. When doing the CMA, I'll also look at recent concessions that were given in the area so that I can have an idea of, you know, at the end of the day, the client needs what they need, but so I can know to educate them on, hey, all right, in this area, typically, you know, they'll give anywhere between $3,000 to $7,000 in seller help, just to kind of educate the client on what the strategy may be, because if they need more than that, I want to make sure that they're aware that that may weaken the offer because it's not common in the area.
Right. Well, that's why you have, exactly. You're going to look at all of the factors, but understand that honestly, in most, like in certain price points, particularly the lower ones, I would say anything up to like four-ish, 100,000, people are asking for seller concession. They just do. Like at least 50% of offers ask for seller concession. So whether it's common in the comps that you see or not, it's just a certain way to negotiate. It's really, for the seller, it's the net, right? Now, so you've got the ability to negotiate, meaning that you're going to come in lower than the asking price in one way, shape, or form, whether it's lower than the asking price on the front, what I call the front, meaning the actual purchase price. You're going to come in 5, 10, however many $1,000 less than the asking price, or you ask for chunks of money in the back end. Now, if they need cash assistance, it's also super important to have that conversation with the lender about the specific details. That's when you're going to ask the lender what the loan amount allows for seller help. Not some loans cap it at 3% and some loans cap it at 6%. So you want to make sure that, again, specific to the property, specific to the buyer, you're revisiting this with the lender to say, hey, what's the maximum allowable seller contribution I can ask for here? So you're going to ask that question to the lender up in these questions. So if it's a house that you have the ability to negotiate, those are the strategies are a mix of that. You know, you come off the price a little and you ask for a little seller help. The other side of that is you have a picture perfect HGTV house that has been on the market for 2.5 seconds and has 5 offers. Okay. And this is where at that buyer consultation that you had long before this, right? You are going to explain that there are two types of negotiating. You can't always get a deal. If you are insistent on getting a deal, you're not going to want to look at a house that's been on the market for 3 seconds. You're only going to want to look at things that have been on the market for 30 days or longer. right? And you still may run into competition. And if you love that house, it's not going to be about the deal. It's going to be about getting the house, which we talked about yesterday on the team meeting, right?
Right.
Because then it's like, do you want the house or do you want a deal? I'm going to repeat myself. And you can literally ask this question. It punches people in the face and they will answer and say to them, listen, I don't care what your answer is, right? But that's going to change the strategy. Do you want the house or do you want a deal? And if they're like, I want a deal, if my client had said, I want a deal, I would have said to her, look, we can put this together, but you're not going to get it. There's 4 other offers, right? You have, again, this is all, people respect me because I just punch them square in between the eyes. I just tell them like it is, right? I don't argue with them. I just tell them the way it is. Now, there's certain people that don't like that, and that's fine. And then I've just learned that those are not my people, and I'm okay with that, right? So you have to say to them, do you want the house or do you want the deal? Okay. She said to me, I want the house. I said, okay, you're willing to fight for it? Because the day before she said to me, I don't want to get into a pissing match. Okay. She told me that she didn't want to get into a pissing match, yet she fell in love with the house and now her tune changed. She's like, and I have texts from her. We're all in, do what you need to do. I want the house. Okay, so we did what we needed to do. In which case, then there's a completely different negotiating strategy. Now it's about presenting a clean, easy to navigate for the seller, the most money, the least problems offer for the seller. So how do you do that? You do easy financing. So we're not talking FHA. We don't do seller help. We do more money. We do an escalation clause, which I'm going to get to in a second. Mm-hmm. We do an as-is contract with potentially right to terminate, which I know you've done before, but you've lost a couple. So I want to talk about the strategy there on how to keep people in the deal at the home inspection. So we're going to do high-level contract today, and we're going to do probably a medium-level home inspection / as-is discussion. Okay? Okay. So you're going to have a whole lot of conversation and prep before you've even pulled the documents. Because this way now, this is going to tell you, these are going to show you what documents you actually need to pull. Right?
So, and that's what I was going to say. And excuse my ignorance, I do this because I was taught this is what you have to do before you can pull docs.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yep. 100%. So, okay. So we're going to have a conversation about establishing the offer strategy. Is there anything else you need to do?
Give me 30 seconds here. Let me see. I just want to make sure I'm not missing everything because I like this conversation about establishing an offer strategy. There's not something that I have to do, but something that I've started to do here more recently is I circle up with the client to have a conversation about, do they have, assuming, because I believe all my contracts are going to be ratified and accepted. Do you have, or have you begun getting the documents together that are needed for the lender? Okay. So, and I don't say you have to do that. That's just something that, through failure, I've learned that is a best practice for me now.
Okay. That's a good one. That's not the one I was thinking of, but that's okay. Crystal, you got anything for me?
I'm on 2 conference calls right now, so I'm just listening in right now.
Gotcha. Okay. So then you're going to watch this again later and take Yes. Okay.
And then I'll report back.
Yes.
Like homework. I have time. You're my real estate day.
All right. Good.
Jason, thanks for talking through. I'm listening to you guys both.
All right.
Yes,
so Jason, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to call the listing agent.
Okay.
Okay. Why? Any idea why? Yeah,
so, and I didn't know if everyone did this, so I'm going to say why I do it. I usually reach out to them to let them know of interest that my client has and that an offer's coming, because
Yes.
I don't want them to accept an offer prior to me getting mine in.
Yes. Yes. So that is one. You want to tell them an offer is coming. You want to ask them what the seller's preferred closing date is.
Gotcha.
You want to ask them about any specifics regarding the seller's situation. This
Gotcha.
way, did I spell that right? Yeah. This way you know, okay?
Right.
You want to also establish rapport with other agent.
Right.
You want to ask what their preferred method of communication is. Okay? If you called the listing agent and did all of this ahead of time, hey, I'm Jason Hall. Listen, we just showed your listing at 123 Main Street. The buyer definitely has some interest. You know, nice to meet you. We're gonna be talking about putting an offer together. Does the seller have a preferred settlement date? Is there anything the seller, you know, wants or is included, excluded? That's the specifics regarding the situation. Where is the seller moving to? Have they found a new house? You know, hey, I see this house has been on the market for a long time. Do you have any other interest? These are all the questions that you want to ask and get them on the phone. And hey, what's your preferred method of communication? If I get this to you at 10 o'clock at night, is that okay? Oh, Anisha's here. Hold on. I don't know how to let her in while I'm sharing the screen. Hold on. Okay, hold on. I wonder if my whiteboard went away. Hey girl, hey. So I wonder if my whiteboard went away. If all the text I just put on my
I hope not. Oh, no, you're good. There you
go. It's still there. I'm using the whiteboard feature on Zoom, Anisha.
Exciting.
So we're talking about all the things you need to do before you even get into dotloop.
FYI, before you get too far, Mike Rogers is coming in.
Okay. Is he trying to? All right, hold on.
Yeah, he just texted and said he's coming, so I just wanted to give you a heads up before you got into.
Okay. Okay. So, oh, he's here. All right, hold on. I got to stop sharing, then I'll come back. Where is he?
That's why I figured I would tell you before you got deep into Shannon.
Jason.
Is that a blanket, a sweater, a sweater blanket? Like, what is that?
It's a $3,000 volleyball fucking shirt.
Damn, that's official.
FYI,
Designer.
this is being recorded, Anisha, for future use.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, people.
Listen, Anisha is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Me too, yo. All right, Mike said he was coming, but then he's not here. Where you at?
I would sit up straight if I know.
You like you laying down watching your stories.
Kinda. Not watching any stories, but I kind of have a headache. I'm trying to buy.
Oh, I feel better.
Trying to convince my buyers to stop looking at the dumb stuff he want to look at and look at what I'm telling them to look at.
Is he? Oh, there he is. Okay, admit. All right. Okay. There you are. You here? So, hey, Mike, I'm recording this, and we've covered quite a bit already. So I just want you to know to go, I'm going to put it up on somewhere and you can go back and watch it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So what we've covered so far, I was actually using the whiteboard feature, which is right here, are all the things that you need to do before you actually even write an offer. So that is, so we've had a long conversation about this. All right, so we've done all this stuff. We've talked to the lender, we've talked to the listing agent, we've talked to the buyer, and we're like, and we've got our strategy going, right, Jason? So Jason's my
Yes.
guinea pig here. So Jason, I'm gonna actually stop share. I wonder, can I, oh, save. Let's go ahead and save this. Whiteboard saved. Nice. Fix that later. We're gonna stop sharing and then I'm gonna share again. And I'm gonna go over here to .loop. And so this is not a .loop tutorial, but for the moment, we're gonna go to .loop and we're gonna say, we're gonna go to here, we'll go here. We're gonna say, all right, we need new documents, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll pretend like we're gonna add a folder. And we're gonna say that this is offer training, okay? So we're gonna go to templates, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then we're gonna go to sales. Where is it? Sales improved forms, okay? And so obviously the first, you've done your buyer consult, so you don't need this anymore. I'm kind of a fan of the contract cover page. It's really just an extra page, but it's like a throwback to my old school OPF days. Do you remember this, Anisha?
Uh-huh.
Did you ever use it?
Sometimes it depended on if I felt like it was sometimes in multiple offer situations, but most of the time, no.
So this is unnecessary, but I like it. The next one is you're gonna wanna, and again, not a .loop tutorial, but you're gonna wanna look at your dates when it was updated. So right here, residential contract of sale, updated December 31st, okay? You're gonna come on down here, the consumer notice, that's all been signed by the buyer at the buyer consult, the affiliated business. All of this should have been done at the buyer consult. So none of this needs to actually be done now, okay? What does need to be done, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy this into the loop, and then I'm gonna go back to the whiteboard and I'm gonna do a new whiteboard for a second because there are, here we go. I saved the one whiteboard, so let's see. Okay. I'm going to clear it. Clear, okay. So now we're gonna do a new list, okay? So what goes into a contract? We have the residential contract of sale.
Yep.
You have financing, F-I-N-A-N, financing addendums, okay?
I think we need to put, okay, I was about to say, you gonna put the dash right? Cool.
So you are going either FHA, VA, or conventional, okay? CONVENTIONAL, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Those are your primary loan categories. If you've done everything that we talked about in the beginning of the training session, you will know exactly which addendum to pull, okay? If you've also done what we talked about in the beginning, you'll know exactly how to fill it out, which we're not going to talk about on today's training because we're only going to talk about the contract of sale and a little bit of the home inspection, okay? We're not going to go super deep. What I wanted was a real good process, okay? So residential contract of sale, then we need financing addendums, okay? Then we need inspection addendums,
Yep.
okay? Along with the financing, so now I gotta switch my numbers. that's going to be 4 because this is going to be 3. If you're asking for a seller concession, then you have to add in the seller contribution addendum.
Yep.
Okay. I am a bit of a nut and I like things organized. Anisha there rolling her eyes. I like the contract of sale, financing, all together. So if you have a seller contribution addendum, put it together with it. Then the inspection addendums. Then you have the documents from the seller. And then I put the junk addendums. The junk addendums, in my opinion, are, I guess,
disclosures.
huh?
Seller disclosures.
No, that's the stuff from the seller. That's the stuff from Bright. I'm talking about like, and that the stuff that changes all the time, like the
Baltimore City notices.
no, that's usually from the seller too, like the conservation easement, what is it, the affiliated business, which I don't think needs to be in the contract anymore, but it's like, it's, you know, the understanding who real estate agents represent addendums that don't need to be in the contract anymore. So if you have a dual agency, that's, in my opinion, the junk addendums. Okay, so junk addendum, I'm gonna say here, junk addendums are defined as broker addendums. So like when we worked for PenFed, Anisha, that stupid fucking thing from the credit union addendum, remember that? So broker addendums, agency addendums, if necessary, okay? What does not go to the seller?
Your buyer agency documents.
Thank the Lord, Jason, you won the day.
I try.
Okay. Anisha, do you have anything else to add into the addendum or into the contract here?
A C in agency and
What did you say?
a C in the word agency.
I had it up here.
And while she's thinking, can we change, just for training purposes, can we make junk addendums miscellaneous addendums? Junk makes it seem unimportant or not needed.
I guess I don't feel like they're really needed.
6, seller documents, broker MLS documents. Financing, contract of sale, seller contribution. For a standard contract, that is great. Other miscellaneous documents, things I keep seeing, I have seen recently, is random things, furniture, lawnmowers, all of that stuff do not belong on your standard contract.
Yeah.
If your lender sees a lawnmower or some furniture in the inclusions, what's 4A?
It's as is. It should be as is, not as.
Oh. So if you have a house that's, you know, got a half an acre and they're given the the lawnmower away, the riding mower, which is very common, put that on a blank addendum. Anything that is
You don't put that in the inclusions list?
No, because the lenders keep kicking them. They always kick them back because that's not an appraisal issue.
Okay.
So when the seller puts it in the inclusions, take it out and put it on a blank addendum. And this is bad to say, but don't send it to the lender. They don't want to see it because then it becomes an appraisal issue because those things are not supposed to convey as part of the purchase price. You can have it as just a gift, but it can't be considered part of the contract purchase price. Does that make sense?
Correct.
Machinery, machinery.
Yeah. I've seen that like 3 or 4 times recently.
But for training purposes too, shy away. These are not things that should be included in a real estate contract typically. I mean, again, just on the offer that I wrote, the buyer was like, "Can I have that mirror over the fireplace?" I was like, "Fine." So I put it on the contract. Seller accepted it. She's like, "Yeah, whatever," you know. Okay. Anything else? Is this a comprehensive list here, Mama-san?
Yeah.
Residential contract of sale, financing addendums, seller contribution addendum, inspection addendums, blank addendum, MLS docs from the seller, and miscellaneous or.
So the other thing I do is the first thing that I actually do is like in front of that list, I have a copy of the pre-approval.
What we're not done. We haven't put the package together. We're just pulling this out of. We're just putting it together in Bright.
And okay, cool. All right.
I mean, I'm sorry, in .loop. Yeah, we haven't packaged it together yet. We're just.
You know what another funny is that I'm really sick of seeing, and I can't wait. We as agents have to catch up. If I see one more disclosure that says contract will not be accepted without a copy of the check, miss, it's 2020. My clients are wiring things now, and lots of title companies are not even taking, or companies aren't taking checks. And I was seeing this before COVID, and now it's like, well, okay, we're not doing checks no more. It's like wire.
Right, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So that's just.
Oh, I gotta tell you, my buyer's driving a check down here tomorrow. So anyway, okay, so we have all the documents, all the categories that need to be pulled together of documents. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
No? Great. I'm going to save that shit too. Okay.
This is being recorded for future use.
It is being recorded for future use, and I'm kind of excited about it. My little whiteboards are saving. Good. Okay. So let's get back to, I'm going to stop sharing the whiteboard. And now we're going to go back to .loop. So we're back in .loop. We've got the residential contract of sale, right? Now we're going to go back to templates. And if you remember, so Jason, I know this is fresh. What comes next?
The financing addendums.
Correct. So we're going to go to Sales Maryland Financing. And what kind of loan is this buyer getting?
I don't think we discussed that in our scenario, but we can say FHA.
So just pick one. FHA. Okay. So we're going to do that. We're going to hit OK. What's the next one?
The next one is the seller contribution, if it's needed. I mean, so we're going to say in this case it's needed.
Do we want to say it's needed? Okay. So in that case, this is where, for those of you who are new, you really need to learn the names of the forms. It will save you a ton of time. And in this case, CONTRIBUT, there it is. All you got to type in is the like the main name of the form. In this case, it's seller contribution. We're going to go ahead and add it in there.
Learn the names, because what she said is true. Because yesterday I kept typing concession. Oh my God, for like an hour I was cussing the computer out.
That's hilarious. Okay, and because oftentimes these groups are like, I don't know what's in these groups, so I just go to all Maryland forms and I just choose my own. So okay, what's next?
The property inspections addendum.
Okay, now property. So we know it's property inspection.
Yep.
Look here, this one says response. This is the addendum. So we're going to go ahead and hit that one. Okay. Now, if you notice, this is all jacked up because it's doing it so, and I don't like it that way, right? So I'm going to do the contract of sale, then I'm going to do the FHA, then I'm going to do the seller contribution, then and put the contract cover page up top. Okay, so now what?
Well, because you wanted to cover it, I'm going to say let's add in the as-is addendum since you wanted to discuss it.
So I'm going to go to All Maryland and I'm going to type in as. Ugh.
I think you got to put the full as-is in. Why does it do that? That's weird.
All right, so I think it's in inspection forms. So here's also where you find like the water quality, on-site sewage disposal, like on-site sewage disposal, that's your septic test. So you're not gonna look for septic, you're gonna search on-site. I always just search the word on-site because I know that that's part of it. I thought that as is in here, but I guess it's not. So let's try right.
That's
All
what's
Maryland.
weird. I mean, it's always under all Maryland forms, which is why I don't know why it's not there at the moment.
What are you looking for?
The
As is.
right to terminate.
Oh, I don't know. I have a folder with that and the blank addendum in it, just so I can always get to those two because those seem to be popular for me.
So some COVID things, sight unseen, contract addendum, but honestly, most of this is all like I didn't even use any of the COVID addendums when I just wrote that offer, just so you know. Sales post-contract amendments, lease listing, GBVR, interactive forms, hold on, come on.
I think it's, let me look at my loop to get the exact.
There it is. I put in a dash.
Oh,
And I
got
didn't
you.
like the dash. So
It's petty.
it was petty. All right.
And then we don't have any junk addendum, so
remember,
that should
I
be
like
it.
that down here.
Oh,
with
and then
property inspections. right.
the seller docs from Bright, which we don't have them in this case.
We don't
but-
have this in this case, so then we're going to add a document and we're going to hit browse instead of templates because you will have downloaded them from
Right.
Bright and they'll be living on your desktop. Okay.
As an FYI, if you use the email feature, that is only good for straight email. That is not good for Bright documents that you can email to yourself. For some reason, it will not go into Dotloop. So download the document and browse it, as she said.
Yeah. So, all right. We're going to go into the residential contract of sale. And Jason, since you're my guinea pig, I'm not going to autofill this with anything, but here's what I want you to do. So now we had the pre-offer prep. We had
Yep.
the conversation. We talked to the lender. We talked to the buyer. We talked to the listing agent. We know what we're writing. I'm going to pretend that we have filled in all the terms. Okay. And it is now time for you to review this contract with the buyer. And I want to know what you say to the buyer before you even dig into the nuts and bolts of this contract.
I mean, I just something generic, like, we're going to get into the documents that are applicable to the offer that we're going to submit. If you got any questions, please stop me along the way. I want to make sure that you're clear and understanding of everything, obviously, prior to signing any of these documents. And then I just start the review.
Okay. I'd like you to add a few other things.
Okay.
You have to remember, first off, do not speak realtor, speak consumer. So, and sometimes as a new agent, it's hard because we've learned a new language. So we are kind of just excited that we know how to speak realtor because we understand it. So then we wind up regurgitating it in realtor speak instead of consumer speak. Okay. And honestly, I didn't start doing what I'm about to tell you probably until 15 years in. Okay. So what you want to do, and I've just found that it really sets a nice foundation, is in addition to what you said, look, hey, if you have any questions, just stop me along the way. But let's just give you a very high level overview. Number one, you are committing to buying this house. You cannot halfway through the process throw up your hands and say, hey, you know, I changed my mind. This is a legally binding agreement. You're not getting into this to change your mind. You're getting into this to buy this house. Now, if the house is going to fall down, burn down, make you sick, be a potential health hazard, whatever, that's a different story. And we're going to get into that when we talk about the inspection process. But for all intents and purposes, this is the house, right? This is a legally binding agreement. Part of that comes from right up here at the top. This is a legally binding agreement. In order to get out of it, you might have to contact a lawyer, right? And that'll cost you extra money. So if you're not really into it, then maybe we need to pause for just a second, take a couple hours, make sure that this is really the decision you want to make, okay? Again, before Anisha, you got on, this is such a serious thing that you want to hit people square in the face, right? Jason, you've had 3 deals fall apart. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying what we want to make sure of is that people aren't getting into something and then getting out of it, right? You want to make sure that they're really, really ready, right? And I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong, but sometimes a few small tweaks, like I had a coaching client in Florida, and fucking Tina Beliveau, and yes, I know this is on training, was literally crying at her desk because she's like, I can't keep a deal together, right? It's talking about the prep involved with that buyer, making sure they're really gonna do this, helps prevent a lot of heartache in halfway down the line and having to get releases and having to, you get excited you're going to make money and then you're not going to make money, and they get excited about a house and they die. And honestly, when that wears down on people, and then they'll just walk away from the process completely. You don't want that. Okay. So again, you've done all of this pre-offer prep, you've done your buyer consultation, and now the rubber meets the road. Here is sort of that last gatekeeper, like, okay, this is what it is. You are, and this is the other piece. I do a very overview. This is a legal promise. You are promising to buy the house, and they are promising to sell it to you. And you are promising to give them a certain amount of money, and they are promising to hand you the keys and not burn down the house in the process. You are promising that you are going to go and do your due diligence and get the financing you're stating that's in here. And we're going to talk about that. They are going to keep paying their mortgage and keep the property insured. And you are promising you're going to get inspections, and they're promising that they will maybe make some repairs if necessary. Okay. So I kind of give this very high level. This is a legal promise. If you break any of those promises, it is considered default, and your earnest money deposit, oh, we forgot about that. Your earnest money deposit could be at risk. And that's what we don't want. You're not automatically going to get that back. You have to make sure that you are in it for the long haul. So these are some of the things that I say up front to prep them. Does it make them nervous? Yes, but honestly, I kind of want them a little nervous. I want to make sure they're in it. I don't want to make sure that they're taking this lightly. Okay. So then I'm like, okay, you got it. And then they're like, uh-huh. And I'm like, all right, let's dig into the meat of it. And I start going in. This is the seller's names. These are the buyer's names. This is the property address. This is the properties being conveyed in fee simple or subject to an annual ground rent. Now, if we go back to the 2 whiteboards, what we didn't talk about was the earnest money deposit. The earnest money deposit should be 1 to 2% of the purchase price. So if you're at $150,000 property, you're looking at a $1,500 earnest money deposit. The one I just did at 325, they're giving 3,500. Okay. Now it was funny because my buyers have more cash, and they were like, oh, would it be better? Like, cause they were in competition. They were like, should we give more? And I'm like, no. We don't want it enough that the seller then wants to actually really try to keep it, okay? We want it enough to show they're serious, but not enough that if the buyer does want to get out, they'll get it back, or hopefully, right? Anisha, how do you feel about that?
I feel like for the majority of the times, that's true. If I have a buyer that's determined, like your buyer said, I will do a second deposit. I will say after the home inspection, you can do a second deposit so that the seller knows that they have money on hand and it's available, but let's not put it all up front. So if there is an issue where the seller's being ridiculous and we have to try to walk away, they don't have full access to all of it.
Crystal over there having a good old time.
Who?
You laughing?
What are you talking about?
Okay, payment terms. Here's the deposit. Now, as a former broker manager, I'm going to tell you why I don't like second deposits. Because 95% of the time, everyone forgets about them. And it is a place for the buyer to forget, not submit the second deposit. And if the seller's looking for a reason to get rid of said buyer, that's their out. Oh, they didn't submit their second deposit? Never mind, I had a better offer on the table. Goodbye. And they terminate the contract. So I think that second deposits tend to be fraught with problems. And as a manager, that is where I saw a lot of problems. So I don't ever encourage a second deposit. I don't like them. I just think that they're problematic. So that's my take. But I was a manager for too long. So that's my thought process. Okay. Oh, another thing we forgot. So all this fun stuff on the front page. You have to also talk to the buyer about the title company. The title company is the one who's going to hold the deposit. For future training purposes, whatever brokerage company we are with, typically we tend to try to support the local in-house title company. If not, you don't have to. If you have one, you just have to make sure that the title company, is responsive, does a good job, all that stuff. So currently our three are Terrain Title, Broadview Title, and NRT Title. Those are the three that we are currently using. And today is 2020, COVID-19. Okay. You're also going to pick the settlement date, which we discussed. Then we're going to talk about the buyer financing. Now, your preemptive sort of strike of explanation of the promises, that's all kind of like right here. Now you get to dig in to the financing. So Jason, tell me, what does this financing mean? Describe it to me in a nutshell. Don't read it to me, just describe it to me.
So effectively what it's saying is that based off of the initial time frame that's listed, so let's say 7 days, that you as the buyer are agreeing to submit your formal written application to your lender. And then within the set time frame, 45 days, 30 days or whatever, you're agreeing that to obtain a written financing commitment from the lender. And should you not, I'm sorry, say it again.
What does a commitment mean?
I might say I use the term clear to close, or like the lender is committing to provide you with the financing needed to close.
Okay. And then what does paragraph 11 mean?
Paragraph 11 is always a struggle for me. Like I explain alternate financing as like non-traditional financing, but that was a question I was going to pose to you, that okay. Would it be considered
alternate financing? And this is where I want you to read this word for word. You don't have to do it right now or on this training, but if ever there is a contract clause that you are confused about, I want you to read it word for word, okay? And so I'm going to read this right here. I'm going to actually skip to the part that's important, which is right here. If buyer, at buyer's sole option, obtains a written commitment for financing in which the loan amount, term of note, amortization period, blah, 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 or any addendum to this contract. So what this is effectively saying is the buyer can get whatever kind of financing the buyer wants to get other than what is stated in the contract, as long such alternate financing may not increase the costs to the seller, so long as it does not cost the seller any more money, okay? This clause right here is why if you write a conventional contract, the buyer cannot flip to FHA. So when you're having that preliminary conversation, it's a one-way street. You can write an FHA contract and flip to conventional, but you can't go the other way. Why? Because an FHA or a VA contract costs the seller more money. I'm going to repeat myself. An FHA or a VA contract costs the seller more money. You have to write the contract FHA or VA initially. And then if the buyer wants to switch and get conventional financing, they can do whatever they want, right? They can, if they go conventional and they want to go conventional 100% down or whatever, as long as it doesn't incur additional costs to the seller, buyer can get whatever the hell kind of financing they want, as long as it happens within these date timeframes. Now, these date timeframes, I relate that back to this is one of your promises, meaning that if you don't make your formal loan application within 7 days and the seller is looking for a reason to get rid of you, here's another reason. If you don't get your loan commitment within the specified time frame, so you literally want to look at a calendar and count out the days. 45 days, 38 days, I don't care how many days it is, count out the days, make sure, again, ask the lender, hey, how many days do you need for a formal loan commitment? Okay, so these two are huge. This second one right here, again, the only time a seller is going to pay attention to that date is if the seller's pissed and wants to take another offer. And they're looking for a reason to kick the buyer out. Because typically a seller doesn't have the option to kick the buyer out. It's very one-sided in the Maryland real estate contracts. It's more about the buyer than it is about the seller. Okay? The seller, once they've accepted, they're the ones that have the choice. They kind of just have to wait for the buyer controls the whole process.
So before we get too far down, one question on something I wanted your opinion on. If you can go up to number 9. On number 9, obviously it's self-explanatory. You select the particular addendum, but under other, I will list whatever grant programs that they're receiving. And I do that as a means of, for whatever reason, should the grant program fall through, so on and so forth, and affects their financing, my belief is I want it to be in the contract.
So
do you agree, disagree?
I 100% agree with that strategy. Buyer's obligation to purchase the property is contingent upon a buyer obtaining written commitment for the loan secured by the property as follows. They're getting an FHA loan and they're getting that grant. And if they don't get that grant, this contract is contingent upon getting that grant. Well done. Good job.
Okay.
Yes, I 100% agree. Okay, so we've gone through this first page. We talked briefly about the financing. We're not going to get into those financing addendums today. We'll talk about them maybe next Tuesday on more contract training. We talked about the alternate financing. This should mirror what is in the MLS or what the buyer wants. Now, here's the thing. Oftentimes in those bright MLS documents, the inclusions and exclusions form is sent over. However, that is not a contractual document. It should not, it's not part of it, okay? This is what counts. What's sent over by the seller is only a guide, okay? This is what counts. You want a mirror over the fireplace? Write it in. You know, whatever. You want if the documents from the seller say the washer and dryer is excluded, but you want to use that as a negotiating tool, check the boxes right there. It doesn't matter what the seller says. What the seller says, that's just the marketing, right? What matters is what this contract says. If the seller says, no, I'm going to take the washer and dryer, then that's a negotiating term. That's a term. Okay. Now, I usually put in here agriculturally assessed. I always usually write the word seller because very rarely do we touch any of these forest conservation or agriculturally assessed properties. We'll spend some time, and I think we've talked about the lead paint stuff. We'll talk about that another time as well. This is super important because the included addenda is what makes the contract all together. It's this first 11 pages plus all of these addendums. So make sure you're clicking off seller contribution or whatever needs to be a part of the contract. Okay. Now, Jason,
Yep.
talk to me about the wood destroying insect process.
Okay. So as long as it's not VA, because then the seller will cover it at your expense, Mr. or Mrs. Client. If there is,
And how
if
much
there's
does
belief,
termite inspection usually cost?
it can be anywhere from, I tell people from 75 to 150-ish, just to be higher. I've never seen one in my short time more than $100.
Yeah, they're like $80, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I like to have a little bit of wiggle room just in case. So effectively in this case, we're going to say it's not VA. So at your expense, you can have a wood destroying insect inspection, or in some cases, some people may say termites, but I don't like termites because there are other insects that are wood destroying that may not be a termite. The way it works is that once the report comes in, if there is damage, the seller is responsible for paying for the damage as long as it does not exceed 2% of the purchase price. If it exceeds 2% of the purchase price, there are one or two options. Either they can terminate the contract, or you can pay the portion that exceeds the 2%. That exceeds the 2% of the purchase price that needs to be gone, that needs to go to fix it. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 5 days from when the report comes, the seller has to respond. Once the seller responds, you get 3 days to respond to the seller in terms of your intention. And then, I don't know why I'm blanking. I know the last one is 5 days, but I can't remember what the last 5 days. No, if the seller does not respond within 5 days, then effectively it makes the contract null and void.
Okay, so here's what I would say. You probably got too wordy because you lost
Okay.
me. And you got to remember, the buyer is super overwhelmed at this point. So you've got to make it easy, simple, okay? You're going to pay for a wood destroying insect unless you're a VA buyer. And if there's any kind of wood destroying insects found or damage or a prior infestation of any kind, the seller is required to fix that up to 2% of the purchase price. Now, you need to translate that to what that means to the buyer. You had a $150,000 house, that means up to $3,000 worth of either extermination, damage, whatever, is automatically baseline covered by the seller in this contract. If it goes over that, this paragraph talks about how to deal with that, if it is, but very rarely does it go over that amount of termite damage, okay? If it does, we'll talk about that when we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Done. Okay. Clean that up a little bit, because if you get too wordy and you get into the weeds, don't get into the weeds. The purpose of explaining the contract is making it so that the buyer totally understands what they're getting into without getting totally overwhelmed. Okay? And they're really not even going to remember this shit. You're going to have to re-explain it to them over and over and over again. Okay? All right. So that's the wood destroying insect explanation. Now, the deposit paragraph. So this is that earnest money deposit.
Yep.
Oh, thank goodness. Great. Okay. So I'm not going to ask you to explain this. I'm going to just give it to you how I explain it. And honestly, I'd like Anisha to chime in here as well to see how she explains it, but I'm going to give you mine and then maybe see how she does. So the deposit that you're writing, that 1%-ish, right? So that $1,500 on our $150,000 house is going to go into an escrow account with a title company. You're going to sign a document that says that they've received it, blah, blah, blah. Now, what's super important is to understand that the seller doesn't get that deposit. Not right now. It goes into an account, and then what it does is it effectively reduces your cash to close by that amount on your closing time. So it's pay it now or pay it later, okay? You're gonna pay it one way or the other. 1% is average typical, makes you look strong enough. We already talked about that part, okay? So let's talk about what happens if you don't buy this house, okay? If you are dealing, and this is, again, a lot of my years with as a manager, okay? I like to address the fact that you have people who are normal and rational and understand the contractual obligations and what's written, right? And so normal and rational people will say, oh, okay, the buyer didn't get their loan. Therefore, I'm going to sign the release and give them back the deposit because that's how the contract is written and that's how it's supposed to work, okay? Or, you know what? We didn't agree on the home inspection. So we didn't agree. All the time frames were adhered to. I'm going to go ahead and release the buyer from the contract and give the deposit back, okay? But here's the problem. If we wind up dealing with not normal and not rational people who get angry and upset, they may not sign that agreement. And in which case, you may not get your deposit back. Now, that doesn't mean that they get it, right? The document signed to release the deposit to anyone has to be signed by all parties. It's called the release of obligation and deposit by all parties. All parties, the buyer and the seller, have to sign that document to tell the title company where your deposit's going to be sitting, where the deposit is to go. Now, once I've explained that, I go, do you understand? So I'm going to say that. Do you understand? Does that make sense, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, Anisha, chime in here.
I don't know if I say it that way. I think I'm trying to move the screen. This is making me crazy. I say some of that. I say the deposit is what you put down to make sure the seller knows that you're interested in the house. In the event that we move forward, you are credited that money at the bottom, off of the bottom line of what the lender told you were supposed to have invested in the deal. It's also your investment to make sure that you're doing things according to the terms of the contract, is what I actually say. If you are not doing what you are supposed to do as a buyer, you put your deposit in jeopardy. So we're going to make sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to do, and the title company will hold the money. And if something goes wrong where you and the seller are not agreeing, you both have to sign off on where the money goes. And then I usually leave it kind of basic. The seller gets the, the buyer gets the credit off of the thing. Yeah, and I think I just leave it there. That you have to do everything that you're supposed to do, and you can't get that money back unless the seller signs off. So y'all have to be in agreement and doing everything that you're both supposed to do to keep making the contract work so that we don't have an issue and we get to closing.
Any questions from the peanut gallery?
None so far.
Not so far? Okay, good. All right, so that's the deposit. Now, there is, and honestly, I'm gonna skip because years ago, the deposit clause and the default clause were next to each other, and I preferred it that way. So
and this is where I talk about that part. Default is my fun part.
Exactly. And so the default clause, so I will skip because we're talking about the deposit right now, so we might as well stay on that topic. So I skip over to clause 34 so that we can talk about default. So what does default mean? Default means, remember in the very beginning, I talked about those promises. This is what default means. You didn't hold up one of your promises. The timeframes set forth in this contract, the days you have to apply for financing, all of those timeframes, if you don't adhere to them, it's default. If you don't give your earnest money deposit, it's default. If you don't make your loan application, it's default. What default means is that is an opportunity for one party or the other to say, you didn't hold up your end of the promise and you're out of here. And in which case, then the other party can try to hold the deposit, okay? You do not want to default on the contract. You do not, because
That's where I usually
it's a liability.
when you default, this is where your attorneys come in play. Depending, the seller can default too, but make sure that if you want to move through this contract and get this to settlement, do everything that I'm asking you to do, that you're supposed to do, that the lender is asking you to do, so that this does not become an issue. Because lawsuits are not fun.
Exactly.
And technically, they got to go to mediation before lawsuits, but that's a whole nother story.
Right, well, we haven't gotten there yet. So the other thing about default, and here's the mediation part. A seller is supposed to make, oh, sorry, now it froze on me, so hold on. Okay, where are we going back here? So we were at deposit, deed, and title. Okay. So deed and title is one of these paragraphs that, to be honest with you, it took me forever to learn what it meant and how to explain it. Okay. And so I'm gonna give it my best, because a lot of this is all like legalese. And so the way I explain it is, when you go to college and you get a degree, right? Your degree is kind of intangible. I have a degree in psychology, okay? But what is the document that shows you have that degree? It's your diploma, right? The diploma shows that you have that degree. That's what deed and title is. Title is you owning the property. You hold ownership to the property, and the deed is the physical piece of paper, like your diploma, the physical piece of paper that says, yes, you own this property, okay? The deed is what gets transferred from owner to owner, transferring the ownership from them to you. That is what the title company does. Now, there is what's called a chain of title, in which one owner to the next, to the next, to the next, okay? Now, what a title company does is, not only are they a coordinator of the funds, the money, all of that, but they also do a search where they search that chain of title to make sure that they are giving you a clean title, okay? And that's that, and that is all I explain. I don't get into anything else, because I think it's getting into the weeds. Anisha, what do you do?
I do the same thing. I do a shorter version probably of that part. The only thing I do is I do explain that if the seller is having a title issue and they're trying to fix it, it will automatically extend your contract 14 days. It is built right into that paragraph. And the only reason why I know it, and the only reason why I've explained it now, is because it happened to me.
So and seller like security defects, contract shall. So what do you? So sellers. So what does that mean?
So if there's a judgment, a lien, something on the title that the seller was unaware of, let's say I just looked up a property and it had a mechanic's lien on it, which I've never actually had before. It actually had a mechanic's lien from the pool company. So let's say the seller and the pool company were in a fight. He said, I'm gonna sue you. The seller is not aware that he actually did sue him, or he's not aware that the lawsuit came with a lien against the property. So if you wanna sell this property, you're gonna pay me my money. So in order for him to cure that defect, he has 14 days to get with the pool guy and either pay him or settle it to clear the lien off of the house. If the seller is willing to clear it, it automatically extends your contract 14 days.
Oh, interesting.
So the reason why I explain that is because for the people, I tell people not to go to settlement. If you have to be out of your apartment on the 30th, please try not to schedule settlement on the 30th. You're a grown up, do what you want. But this is one of the reasons why I like to leave a little buffer.
Okay, that's great. I totally just learned something there. I didn't know that. Okay. The next part is condition of property and possession. It is, remember I said that the seller is promising to deliver the property. They're going to hand you the keys on an empty, room clean house. You have the right to re-inspect the property 5 days prior to closing. And this is in bold letters, except for otherwise specified, the property is sold as is. You are buying a resale house, and we're going to get into the inspections in a minute. Okay, the next one, the adjustments. Again, I make this super easy. Everything, all the fees that travel with the house, not the buyer. So we're talking taxes, water, homeowners association, condo fees. They all get adjusted per the day of closing. That's one of those jobs that the title company does for you. Settlement costs. In the state of Maryland, the buyer pretty much pays all the costs, and they are the ones, and their buyer is agreeing to pay all of the closing costs. Transfer charges. This is one of those places where a tax is applied in 3 different components to the transfer of real estate in Maryland. You have a Baltimore tax, a state tax, a couple of other taxes. That is, it's one tax divided down the middle, and usually the buyer and the seller share it. Now, as a first-time home buyer, you may get a credit on parts of this. That's what this all says. Broker liability, and I usually skip through this. It just means that we're not liable for anything, literally. I don't even dive in. Broker's fee. It says that we're allowed to get paid at closing. Seller responsibility. Seller has to keep paying the mortgage. Seller has to keep the property insured. Seller can't knock the property down. All that stuff. Seller has to keep the property, okay? Buyer, you cannot Alexa, shut up.
I don't think that's an Alexa command.
She shut up. The buyer cannot misrepresent your ability to purchase this property. You cannot misrepresent your ability to get financing, okay? And the buyer has to do their due diligence in getting financing, meaning that if, for like Crystal, I don't know, Kevin's is a perfect example. He was able to purchase the property, then he spent the money, and then he kind of screwed it up, but he can't just throw up his hands and be like, oh, I fucked up. He can't do that.
Exactly.
He has to actually be dedicated in trying to get the financing. Homeowners association. This says it's not unless it is, right? Yes.
In the buyer responsibility, I also add, you cannot buy a car. You cannot do anything to jeopardize your credit.
We covered that in the beginning.
Okay, making sure.
Okay. We covered that in the pre-offer prep. Don't mess with your money at all.
Because they crazy.
Ground rent. Let's do another training on ground rent later. This property is not contingent upon selling or leasing any other real estate. The seller cannot negotiate a new lease. We already covered default. Mediation of disputes. If there is a problem between you and the seller, you cannot sue each other first. You have to go through a court-appointed mediator. And honestly, I leave it at that. I don't get into anything more. Because usually by now, the buyers are real weary and they're looking at the stack of paper and they're like, sweet Jesus, I still have 30 more pages to go, right? But this is the meat and potatoes of the agreement. It is important. Attorney's fees. If the real estate agents and brokerages get dragged into a company, this says that you're going to pay our attorney's fees, which I think is funny because that's never actually true. Do you talk about this at all, Anisha?
I say it, but I've never been in a lawsuit, so I don't know the actual experience.
The buyer has a right to choose all of their settlement service providers, your own title, mortgage, all that stuff. Property owners, title insurance. The lender's going to ask you for that, and we'll talk about that at another time because I don't want to overwhelm you. You have to know what the buyer needs to pay attention to and what they don't, right? And this is one of those things that right now, don't overwhelm them, okay? TILA RESPA integrated disclosures, it just means that the buyer and the seller's fees can all be on the same page. And the only reason why this is in here is because in 2008, they created a bunch of new laws and they took them apart, which made things more complicated. So then we had to add a clause in that allowed them to come back together. And you can get a home warranty. We can talk about that later. I mean, I literally try to kind of blow through some of this stuff because I know that they're already freaking out. The guarantee funds means, and I let them know, if you have a problem, if you feel like you've been wronged by the real estate agents, you can file them for a monetary claim up to $50,000. This doesn't apply to you. This doesn't apply to you. Unless you are in a Chesapeake Bay critical area, it also doesn't apply. So I don't talk about that. And I start to go faster because, like I said, people are getting weary. This doesn't apply. This doesn't apply. This doesn't apply. This doesn't apply. This does apply. This is your reminder to check the sex offender list. It is a Googleable thing. Just Google sex offender list in Baltimore. It'll take you to the website. You can plug in your zip code and see what you got going on. I will tell you, every zip code has somebody. So it is what it is.
And say that, because when you say it, it makes them not feel so crazy about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something to the effect
Every
of,
single zip code has somebody. Military, this is a noise issue. Notice to the parties, the realtors aren't making any representations with regards to the following: water quality, lot size, existing zoning, things like that. It is the buyer's responsibility to find out, to do their due diligence, and that's part of what we do with the inspection process. You can appeal your taxes within 60 days after you have settled. You cannot assign this contract to anyone else. The paragraph headings are for convenience only. The computation of days, I actually usually hit that in the very, very beginning. And again, this used to be on the front too. It used to be right next to time is of the essence. And I wish they'd freaking put it back there because it makes more sense. So what this means is that a day is a day is a day. It's from 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. It means that it's Christmas Day, Easter, July 4th. It means that I never get a goddamn day off.
Oh, I don't say that part. Maybe I'll say that part.
Oh, I do. Because it reminds them, I'm like, that if one of the time frames that we've just reviewed fall on Christmas or Easter or some other holiday, yes, I will be hunting you down for a signature because I'm protecting you and your assets, okay? It means that if there's a deadline and it's 11:59 p.m. and we haven't come to that deadline, I will be hunting you down at 11 p.m. if I have to, okay? It also means let's count the days. So right here, it says date of contract acceptance. What that date is, that is the trigger date. That's the date that starts everything. So all of those, you have to apply for financing within 7 days. You're having your home inspection within 10 days. All of those within certain numbers of days start clicking off on this date. Now, how do you compute days? It's silly we have to have this conversation. But the day that something happened is considered day zero. When somebody explained this to me, I was like, oh, this is so much better. The day that something happened is considered day zero. So let's say today is the date of contract acceptance. Today is Tuesday, April 21st. Today is day zero. That means tomorrow is day one. Okay. Do I get this detailed with all of my buyers? 100% yes. At the buyer consult, you have to explain that the offer prep and presentation is another hour-long session. They're buying a house. So like they have to be prepped, that they have to take time. They're buying a house. They are making the largest investment of their life. They're going to have to take time off to go through this contract, to make these decisions on negotiating. They're going to have to take time off for the inspections. They have to put time and effort and focus into purchasing the house. It is a big deal. If they can't put attention on it, it's not the time. They can't just breeze through it. And then right here is where you would check the first-time home buyer. Another pet peeve of mine, please make sure all of this stuff is filled out. The buyer's names, the buyer's address, the seller's names, the seller's address, all of the listing brokerage information, all of the selling brokerage information, all of it.
Most of it can be found in the MLS. So don't say, I didn't know. It's usually right there at the very bottom of the listing.
Exactly.
And just as a side note on the a day is a day computation of days, whatever that is right before the paragraph. I also say, if you are sick, you're a death in your family, something, please let me know, whether, whatever is going on, because I can't help you if I don't know. things there, life happens when we're in contract. If an emergency happened, please let me know. I can't guarantee you I can get you out of a deadline, but what I can do is start a conversation and see how I can help. So make sure that if you know something's going on with your client, that you are on top of it. Because they'll be like, well, I was busy. That's not a legal answer to anything. Nobody cares that their uncle died. Like, make sure you're on it.
All right. How's everybody feeling so far? Because I know this is long.
I'm good.
Everybody good?
Crystal?
Crystal's only half listening. She has
She's on another call.
Oh, 2 calls. She fancy. I got 2 phones.
One for the plug and one for the load.
Hey.
It's been very informative. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mike, I really want to make sure that you go back and write down and watch the beginning, because we went through the pre-offer prep like all the steps that you have to do. I'm going to record, this is being recorded, and I'm going to upload it into what's called Adaptive U, which is going to be our little online learning tool. And then I'm going to take the 2 whiteboard things that we did and break them down, which is pretty good. And I'll add the things that we forgot too. What?
Yeah, add the escrow agreement, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So the only other thing I'm going to talk about, because I think that, again, I don't want to overload everybody, is the as-is addendum, because a lot of people are using it right now in multiple offer situations. So this is a really a good way of presenting what I said, Jason, in the beginning, a cleaner offer. Because one of the pre-offer prep conversations is, establishing a negotiating strategy. And if you are putting together an offer on a property that, has potentially multiple offers, you may want to use this as a strategy, which still protects the buyers, because the buyer does have the ability to still do all of their due diligence. And what this does is this actually just kind of cleans it up, meaning that the buyer right here has a choice. They're just buying it as is without inspection, so they're not even going to have an inspector. Now, very, very rarely, like super rarely, would you ever use A, which is without inspections. If you're working with a contractor who knows what they're doing, or they're gutting the property or something along those lines, then okay, fine, you can choose A. But if you are working with a regular consumer buyer, but you're trying to clean up the offer and make it more competitive, you can do as is with inspections and right to terminate. Okay. Now, the key piece in here that is super important is this one in right here. In an as-is sale, you have to have your wood destroying insect inspection, because look, it says here, wood destroying insects are deleted from the contract. Okay, so that means you have to have your wood destroying insect inspection in this period. Okay, it also means that the seller will not be fixing up to 2% of the purchase price if there is a termite issue. Okay, because everything is lumped into one. So you pick a time frame, 10, 14 days, whatever, and you schedule everything in that. Okay, now I just had one of these on Captain Kettle, and they presented us with an as-is contract, and they came back to us and said, look, we were prepared for A, B, and C, but we weren't prepared for X, Y, and Z. We want some more cash. Okay. At the end of the day, were my sellers irritated? Of course they were. But did we have to go through a laundry list of repairs or this? No, we didn't. And we negotiated it down from, a higher request to a lower request. It still cleaned it up. It still made it easier. Even though it was irritating, it still made it easier. Okay. But you still want to make sure that you go into this understanding that a home inspection is not a pass, fail, thing. It is a tolerance. Now, I don't know if Anisha agrees with me or not, but I feel like it is a tolerance, not a pass fail. So what that means is, okay. What that means is, yeah, you're buying a resale house. So when you get to the inspection section, you're going to have another preemptive conversation with the buyers. You're going to say, look, you're buying a resale house. There's going to be stuff wrong with the property. There's going to be stuff wrong. What we want to make sure is that the property is not going to flood, leak, fall down, make you sick, or catch on fire. Flood, fall down, leak, make you sick, or catch on fire. This is what a property inspection is for. It is not to nitpick. Yet, an inspector is going to do exactly that. So your report is going to come back with a bunch of stuff, and it's going to make you feel like you bought a lemon, but that's not the case. It's a resale house, okay? Not going to flood or fall down or leak or make you sick or catch on fire. This is what you are having an inspection for. Keep that in mind, okay? When you're doing as is, you're doing this because you want the house so badly that you are willing to forego asking the seller to make repairs. You are really, now this is really drilling into those kind of 5 categories, right? And if the leaky faucet is something that comes up, right? Okay, you're gonna have to look at this and say, listen, you know what? Yeah, that faucet, needs a washer, or what you're doing is you want to look for the major things, the things that are like, okay, you know what? I was willing to buy this house as is. I'm not going to ask the seller for anything. What I'm looking for here is to have, do I need these things because fixed, or do I need money because I'm going to have not enough money? It's more than what I was prepared for. It's always going to be more than what you're prepared for. Prepare for that. And if you properly prep your buyers, they will not want to walk away from deals at the home inspection. Questions or comments?
For everybody that saw the posting of the deal that died several times, this was the problem. The buyer, despite my multiple times of saying everything she just said, could not understand he was buying the house as is. The seller did a very poor renovation job, and then something major came up. So explaining to him, the real choice is walking away, but let me have a conversation with the agent. The agent wanted to keep saying that we were renegotiating terms. Alicia just said to you, again, sometimes that comes up where it's not just walk away, where it's, I want to walk away because of this. And if the seller is willing to further just have a discussion about it, then it's not just the buyer renegotiating terms, but that is not what is supposed to standardly happen. So that's why my deal was such a crap show, but it was the seller. If the seller had done what the seller was supposed to do, the buyer wouldn't have been put in that position to feel how he felt. So it is very important, as she said, to keep reiterating, your contract terms were based on you not wanting anything or you walking away. But everybody knows the goal is to sell the house. So walking away sometimes, if the seller finds out why they're walking away, they'll be like, oh, well, maybe that's not a deal killer. So your job is to keep reiterating it's what you can tolerate, what you can repair within reason. Is it a safety hazard? And that was the reason why we kept going, because it was a safety hazard, gas leak or whatever, potential gas leak. So just make sure you reiterate that and that you understand it, that the buyer does not get to go back with the list and say, well, 3 outlets are not GFCI protected and the sink is leaking and the toilet's not secured to the floor. Like, no, that's not that's not it.
Questions? Jason, Mike, Crystal.
No, I mean,
None for me.
Okay. All right. I am gonna stop for today because we hit the whole meat and potatoes of the contract, and we touched on the as is. Next time we'll touch. Next time we'll do the straight up the property inspections addendum, along with the auxiliary addendum, all inspection addendums, and how to handle all of that. That's awesome. How to handle all of the different inspections, and understanding, again, during COVID and after COVID, how best to assist holding people's hands through the process. But I think I'm gonna wrap it up for today. I've kept you guys too long already.
Where am I seeing the beginning part again?
I gotta download the recording out of Zoom, and then I'm gonna have to upload the recording somewhere, and then I'm gonna have to link that recording to Adaptive View, and it's probably gonna take a couple days for me to make that shit happen.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you having a buyer consult with your conversion buyer?
Your Google
Today,
buyer.
today, yes, I am.
I'm so proud of you. You guys should hear the
It's literally because of
conversation.
y'all.
You should hear the conversation. And so for those of you who are working Google Leads, which I think is all of you, he did a great, and I haven't even listened to the whole thing, but he called the buyer and he was just like, hey, this is Mike from the Essex Bass team. I see that you were browsing our website. Is there anything I can help you with? Like, you're on mute again.
I was pretty much laughing like that was my voice.
Yeah. And it was really non-confrontational. It was like just really easy breezy. And, you know, it definitely, you could tell it caught her off guard, but, you know, she was like, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then he just went right in and, you know, well, so what are you looking for? And she was like, oh, well, my boyfriend and I are looking. And I mean, that's it. And that's all, literally all you have to do is there anything I can help you with? You know? So if you guys want to listen to that conversation, I'd be happy to do it. I thought it was a good lead in. He caught it. I don't know if you guys are noticing, but I added a bomb video to the initial response. Is anybody giving you any response to that? Like, are people watching it?
I haven't
You know?
specifically seen, but I'll look at it.
Huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't seen any, like, I've got
Nobody said, hey, I watched the video from your team leader and it was weird or anything.
Yeah, I haven't had any responses that have gone like, hey, I've watched the video, but like people have responded back because of that and given more details.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Any other questions for now? All right. Good training, guys.
Cool.
Oh, look at the little baby Rihanna
Baby Rihanna.
over Jason's shoulder.
I lost it.
David made your video shareable, Alicia.
Yay. Can I share it?
You can share it.
Really? 'Cause,
We
like,
asked the teenager and everything.
I have like 3,000 Facebook friends.
We asked everybody. It's okay.
Okay. Because if I share it, I think
I asked the teenager first.
here's the thing. The three of you are all lovely people of beautiful color. And a Black dad doing that kind of shit is what I want seen instead of all the other bullshit
Yeah.
that people like fucking
That's
shit.
why he said it was okay.
It was so, I mean, honestly, any dad doing that, but even more so, I was like, oh, this is the kind of stuff people need to see.
I
He
know.
dressed up for his girl. Like, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, it made me miss my daddy. It made me like all of it. Like, I was like, oh, I totally dad shamed Jim. I was like, you wouldn't do this, would you?
Oh, your husband?
I did. I dad shamed him. I had to cut
Did you
it.
guys have your own prom?
Yeah, it's on my face.
Oh,
So damn adorable.
It was just funny. She came down. She was dressed like fast. Because we had bought the dress just on a whim. She just happened to like the dress in the store. And she bought it. Like, she was going to wear it to prom, but